Okay, hello everybody. My name is Zita Wang. I'm here to record this video for our final assignment, final research presentation lecture. I'm here to talk about the research that I conducted over the serial killer case of Gao Chengyong. I'm gonna refer to this serial killer as Gao, just to make no mistakes and the pronunciation more clear. So Gao's case was considered one of the most mysterious and also notorious serial killer crime in China. He committed over 11 homicides and raped over 11 female victims from the year 1988 to 1902. The media gave him the name Chinese Jack the Ripper because his actions and his scenes were very similar to the Jack the Ripper in London. He specifically targeted female suspects who were pretty young and raped them and stabbed them, leaving a horrible things back behind. Another important detail of this case is that it took the law enforcement, the police department, nearly 28 years to finally arrest him. Um, he was put into arrest in 2016 and uh, put to death sentence as well. Um, I'm gonna focus on two topics. The first being why was Gao not captured for so many years, and the second being how was he captured, and what else techniques could we have applied to this case back then. So I need for to understand the nature of this crime. I must first introduce you of the background of 1988 in China. So back in 1988, China only nearly finished the economic reform uh, back then. So as you will know, China is a developing country, and back in 1980s, we weren't a as we are today. We only opened up several smaller or minor countrysides or cities to the economic reforms, bringing new technologies, new way of living, and to our lives very late of the 1980s. Which means the investigation, law enforcement strategies, and thinkings were very old back then. And according to one of the investigators of the Gauss case, back in 1988, when the and back in 2000, uh, the police relied on some of the very old tradition investigation techniques, such as following individual clues one by one, um, going door by door, step by step, and following only the physical evidence and try to see if there's a victim. I mean, if there's a witness, if there's some eyewitnesses, stuff like that. It took so much effort and so much manpower to conduct the research, but they weren't able to get him until he vanished from the before he vanished from the map in 2002 after Gao committed his last murder. Um, so the investigation was very hard for many other reasons as well as like I mentioned, technology wasn't very developed, especially the DNA technology. The Chinese police department had to they successfully obtained a tremendous amount of blood DNA and fingerprints from the scene. They were known that this is the criminal, this is Gao's print, but they didn't know it was who he was or where he was. So they had to look into each fingerprint, compare them individually with naked eyes. Physically, man with only manpower, and because DNA database wasn't developed back then, so Gao's fingerprints and DNA was never actually put into the research, not the put into the investigations database. Um, as the investigation keeps going and expands further and further, um, the pressure on the police department's shoulders were getting very intense. And which brings us to another situation, which is the undeveloped community policing in China back in 1980s and 2000s. So the community was, like I said, pretty undeveloped. Back in after the economic reform, there was intense population flow between provinces and between villages. It's kind of like the industrial what happened to Europe and America during the industrial revolution. Um, uh, People like Gao and uneducated farmers would come and go between cities and villages, and which leaves a highly potential risky or vulnerability to the population of the area, because policing and community was so weak at controlling the environment, which leaves both space and opportunity for a serial killer case like Gao's case to happen. Um, After 2002, after Gao committed his final crime, he vanished, and there are many guesses and reasons or hypotheses for this. But when he was finally captured, according to Gao's own memory, he saw because he had a son, and because the policing forces are getting more and more intense, so he had no more opportunity uh, to commit more crimes like that. Um, so which proves the arguments we had that the environment was one of the biggest reasons that he was able to commit so many crimes without being captured. And how was he captured was actually a coincidence. So back in 2016, that's 28 years after his first murder. uh, Back then China had a very developed DNA technology, and one day a male individual in Gao's family was put into arrest for another charge, and his DNA and fingerprints were put into the policing department's database, and the police were surprised to find out that his DNA, the Y DNA, which carries only by male individuals in the family, has over 99% similarity with the fingerprints and DNA left on the scene for so many years. So the Y DNA technology can determine if a if there's a similarity between the male individuals inside the family, so they could locate. So with the technology, the police department can tell there is at least someone inside this family that has something to do with the crime. And soon, it didn't took really much more time before they locate Gao, and Gao didn't really resist them much. And the police, according to the report, the police asked him why, like, do you know why we're here? And the Gao just said, I know, it's because of my murders. So that's how he was caught, and eventually. And so yeah, it was actually quite a coincidence that if let's say all the male individuals inside his family were never recorded into the DNA database, and there's likely that the case would never be resolved. There are many debates and arguments after his arrest, saying that maybe the police department could have applied more strategies. But like I said back then, it was a highly undeveloped area, and the policing were very traditional, and we weren't introduced to most of the advanced technologies or strategies which were already developed in Europe or America or Canada. One of the strategies that I found out was the geographical profiling technique, which was developed by a Canadian investigator. Also during the uh, year of around 1988. Unfortunately, this was probably unknown to a small village and a minor city in China. So the geographical profiling basically set up a matrix or a area where the police could look into, and follow the trace and draw a similarity or a small conclusion of where the criminal had been and where he could have been and what his playground or where he would have been possibly be seen. So it's not like a search engine where you could just locate the criminal. It's more of a guide to the police department on where he might appear. So yes, this case was one of the few unresolved case back in 2016 until Gao was captured. It left so many police miserable, and they believe they have failed the community for spending so long on capturing the criminal. But like we have discussed so far, there are many reasons behind it. Um, the technology wasn't developed, the community wasn't willing to support the police, and the environment gives support and the condition for Gao to commit crime without being captured. And one thing I failed to mention is that Gao has a very advanced, you could call it, way of avoiding the police detection because he changes his locations very swiftly, and from time to time he never rests in where the body was found, and he usually went go to a small village where his resident was after each case. And after 2002, he finally settled down with his wife and his family, and was off the radar for another 10 years or so. So yeah, that's all my research leads to. Thank you very much.